Welcome to Retro Video Playback and to episode 6 of Tape Talk Tuesday, an episodic video series where I showcase and discuss various movies on VHS. This episode I'll be showcasing the coming-of-age classic from 1973,
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti? Baby, what's that?
It's a movie.
And you dig it, and you dig it.
Go back in time.
Where were you in 62?
Before there was Star Wars, George Lucas made American Graffiti, a tribute to his own youth, cruising the boulevards in hot rods, parking at drive-ins, and listening to rock and roll. Defined by its soundtrack, American Graffiti is a movie of its time in the best possible way. It accurately captures the time it takes place, that being 1962, though I suppose that may not have been too difficult given it was made just 11 years after it takes place, which would be the equivalent of making a movie today that takes place in 2013. But the point is, everything about this movie holds up, and it remains to serve as a time capsule for those of us that were not fortunate enough to experience the time ourselves. I have 4 different copies of American Graffiti on VHS, so there's no time to waste. First is this original version from MCA Home Media, released in 1980. I picked this version up a few months ago when I came across it at a thrift store for just $2. The front cover features the awesome cursive American Graffiti neon logo, and below it a wonderful collage that does its best to capture the multitude of stories and characters that are featured throughout the movie. At the very tip top we have Steve and Lori slow dancing. Then on their left is a car that I originally thought was John Milner's 32 Ford Coupe, but I don't believe it actually is, as this car appears to have a hood on it, unlike Milner's yellow hot rod. And to the right is the band that plays at the Hop, the high school dance. Around all of this is a flowing stream of music notes. In the dead center are John Milner and Carol, who are probably the funniest part of the movie. To the left of them are 2 couples dancing, and to the right is a continuation of the band and a part of a restaurant. I can't tell if it's supposed to be a part of Mel's or not, but to the far lower left is for sure Mel's drive-in. Next to the drive-in is a roller skating server. Just off center is 3 of our main characters, Toad, Debbie, and Kurt. Below them is a random car that, as the license plate states, is cruisin', and whose passengers are sitting oddly low. And finally, to the bottom left is a pair of drag racing cars just above a final flow of music notes continued from the top of the collage. Below the collage are the MCA Home Media and Stereo logos, and all of this is on a plain white background, though this particular tape seems to be an off-white, which I don't know if it's by design or if it's simply discolored in the 44 years since it was manufactured. The top and the spines are an orangey yellow, which feels very 70s. The left spine features the same MCA Universal logo and cursive neon American Graffiti from the front, and at the bottom it reads VHS Hi-Fi Stereo Surround, Dolby System on linear tracks, VHS 66010. The right spine sees a barcode at the top, relocating the MCA logo to the bottom half. The backside finds the neon American Graffiti logo in the exact spot as seen on the front. This isn't something I think I've thought about until now, but this isn't a very common design. Below the primary logo is the color identification, movie runtime of 1 hour 52 minutes, and the PG rating. This is followed up by a bit of a strange write-up. I'll read it and then point out some of the things that stand out to me. This film from director George Star Wars Lucas is one of the most popular films of the 70s. The misadventures of 4 California teenagers one late summer night in 1962 become the focal point for an audience trip back to the last innocent year of the 50s and early 60s. Graffiti features a fine group of young actors who have gone on to become some of today's favorites in movies and TV. The film's soundtrack features many vintage rock and rock hits. Written by George Lucas, Gloria Katz, and Willard Hick. Okay, so the first thing I would say is that this write-up feels like it was either written by someone who's not an especially great writer, or by someone who originally wrote something much longer and was told to cut it down to a certain number of characters. It says it's the misadventures of 4 California teenagers, which I assume they're referring to Steve, Kurt, Toad, and Milner. But first of all, Milner isn't even a teenager. And second, I would say it's a misrepresentation to say the movie focuses on 4 of them. There are way more focal characters than that. Then it oddly refers to the movie as just Graffiti, which maybe that's how they shortened it back when this first came out, and for the sake of characters on this write-up they're shortening it, but that just doesn't work for me. And possibly the most egregious is what I believe may be a typo. The film's soundtrack features many vintage rock and rock hits. Clearly that should say rock and roll, but maybe I'm entirely out to lunch and rock is actually a thing. Maybe it means rocking rock hits, but that's such an odd thing to say, and it's just a weird way to spell it that way. After the write-up are a couple of photographs rather than stills from the movie, one of the roller skating servers at Mel's Drive-In, and the other of Toad and Debbie hanging out on the hood of a car. Beneath the photos is copyright information and then a large rectangular sticker. My best guess is that beneath the sticker is similar information that's found on the sticker, but with perhaps American information versus the Canadian information on the black part of the sticker. The tape features white paper labels on the face and the spine. On the face label, there's an American Graffiti logo, somewhat different than the ones on the sleeve in that it's in one line instead of two, followed by an MCA Video Cassette Inc. logo, color identification, runtime, rating, and an FBI warning. The spine label has similar information as the face label, but of course, in a different configuration. The tape itself is a Scotch F120 VHS. Next is an updated version of the previous copy we looked at, which was released in 1991. The front cover is almost entirely the same as the original we just looked at, the differences being 1, the background is noticeably whiter, 2, the stereo logo has now moved from the center to the bottom left corner, and 3, the MCA Home Media logo, now MCA Universal Home Media, has moved from the center to the bottom right corner. The spines are also similar, featuring the updated MCA Universal logo and some adjustments to the various video and sound icons. The barcode is no longer found on the spine and has relocated to the back of the sleeve, where we find a familiar layout. The notable differences, other than the barcode, being the new Universal logo, modified copyright information, and a slightly shifted layout, with everything being moved a bit lower to accommodate the info at the top. The most notable difference between this version and the 1980 version is on the tape labels, where they've changed up the American Graffiti logos from a dark one-line logo to a two-line logo that mimics the one found elsewhere on the tape. And otherwise it's just small modifications like the size of the FBI warning, the change of the MCA Universal logo, and the plastic of the tape itself switching from the checker type texture to a lined texture.
The 25th Anniversary Universal Special Edition of American Graffiti.
Third up is the 1998 release of American Graffiti on VHS, which as you can see has a plastic clamshell case, the first of this type to be featured on Tape Talk Tuesday, and I'm a bit mixed on how I feel about it. I do love the shimmering teal and chrome design of the paper insert, but I'm not overly fond of it being a plastic clamshell case that's larger than a standard VHS box because it isn't uniform on a shelf. I know that this style was popular in the late 90s. In my collection alone, I've got 4 other movies that come in similar cases, but it's just not ideal for me. But it's also not the end of the world. I simply place them in a different spot on my shelf, and in the end they mix things up a little bit. The main focus of this cover is the same as the ones that came before it, with the collage of characters, but more colorful. Running across the top is a Universal Special Editions banner for the series Universal released for a number of movies in the late 90s, and at the bottom in another banner is THX digitally remastered for superior sound and picture quality. A notable addition is the tagline, "Where were you in '62?", a catchy slogan that has been associated with the movie for decades. So while the front was a mix of teal and chrome, as we rotate the tape, the spine is entirely teal, and then to the back it's entirely chrome. I really think that this is one of the nicer covers I've seen. Here on the back we've got the American Graffiti neon logo that really pops off the chrome background, an animated version of the roller skating server, who in just a little bit we'll see again, a photo of Milner, Laurie, and Steve, and then a write-up. This Academy Award nominated classic, voted one of the American Film Institute's top 100 films of all time, features the coming of age of 4 teenagers on their last summer night before college, rediscover drag racing, Inspiration Point, and drive-ins all over again in this nostalgic look back at the early 60s. The incredible soundtrack brings you the most memorable rock and roll hits of the era. At least it didn't say rock and rock. Directed by George Lucas and produced by Francis Ford Coppola, this classic stars Harrison Ford, Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, Suzanne Summers, Cindy Williams, Wolfman Jack, and Mackenzie Phillips. Capture the heart of America's last age of innocence with American Graffiti. Below the write-up is another movie still featuring Steve and Laurie slow dancing, which, by the way, is the shot that inspired the front cover version of them. Then there's a still of Kurt with Joe, the leader of the Pharaohs gang, a promo shot of Cindy Williams as Laurie, and to the right, a shot of Harrison Ford as Falfa, and finally a shot of Ron Howard as Steve. To finish off the back of this tape is production credits, copyright information, the classic reformatting notice, a Universal logo and copyright information, and a PG rating icon. The tape on this version features just one label on the face of the tape. Nothing exciting and frankly mostly distorted by MCA Home Media Canada logo's watermarking. Finally, the 4th version to be featured on this episode, and also from 1998, is this sealed copy of a screening cassette distributed to celebrate the 25th anniversary of American Graffiti, which I got off eBay maybe 10 years ago. It comes in the same plastic clamshell case as the version we just finished looking at, and I presume it to be the same tape inside, though as you can see, it's sealed so I cannot confirm and we will not be tearing it open to confirm. The label is a teal and white gradient with a photo of Mel's Drive-In as the backdrop, and as it points out at the very bottom, this design does not reflect the final design. I'm assuming the previous tape with the shimmery finish was the final artwork. I don't know if they just didn't have the design done in time for the noted screening date for the 25th anniversary, or if the label was left intentionally plain and underwhelming, but either way the lack of detail is apparent. Working our way down from the top, it reads Universal Special Edition, American Graffiti, Street Date September 15, 1998, Special 25th Anniversary Edition, Full-length screening cassette, compliments of your video sales rep, please return promptly after viewing. It finishes off with a Universal logo and reads, not for sale or rental, and as previously noted, does not represent final artwork. The spine continues the design from the front. There's a Universal logo at the top, followed by full-length screening cassette, the American Graffiti logo, and another not for sale or rental notice. The backside of the tape has a lot of information with Debbie presenting it like a Price is Right model. Directed by George Lucas, produced by Francis Ford Coppola. Cast features many young actors who have become our present-day stars. Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, Harrison Ford, and Cindy Williams. Includes special interviews with George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, Ron Howard, Harrison Ford, and many more. The film will be available in both pan and scan and widescreen versions. Great soundtrack available on MCA CDs and cassettes. While this tape isn't the most eye-catching, it's a pretty unique piece that I'm happy to have as a part of my collection. At the time of recording this video, there's only one copy like it available on eBay, but this one will not be going up for sale. Over the years, American Graffiti has had countless versions on home media, from the VHS featured in this video to Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray, and most recently in November 2023, 4K Ultra HD. It's one of those movies where no matter the format, the movie is as enjoyable as ever, but you've got pros and cons to both. VHS captures that vintage feeling of the movie, adding to its nostalgic feel, while Blu-ray, and in particular 4K, gives it an extra pop and clarity some might never have thought possible to see the movie in. It's a movie that I see myself in the future watching on both VHS and 4K Blu-ray, depending on what mood strikes me. While the focus of this video is on the VHS tapes, I have to take a few moments to recognize the soundtrack. It's obviously entirely subjective, but I think many would agree with me when I say that American Graffiti's soundtrack is one of the greatest of all time. It contains so many great hits from the 50s and 60s, and every time I listen to it, I'm filled with a sense of nostalgia for a time period I never experienced, and I can vividly picture in my mind each scene the songs play in. It was certainly a popular soundtrack, as over the years I have seen what feels like endless versions of it, some of which I have here on CD, vinyl, cassette, and even 8-track tapes. American Graffiti is among my top movies of all time, and apparently I'm not alone. It ranks among the top 60 highest grossing movies of all time, adjusted for inflation. It previously ranked higher, but as time goes on and more movies have joined the list, things have shifted a little bit. With that said, from what I can tell, American Graffiti no longer exists in the popular zeitgeist. For a movie that was once so incredibly popular, I would argue that you'd have a difficult time finding many people who have heard of it, let alone who have seen it and know it well. It appears to be a movie whose audience is aging, and younger audiences do not appear to be drawn to it. That doesn't detract from my own enjoyment whatsoever, but it is interesting that something once so ubiquitous can slowly shift to the shadows. So for those of us who continue to love and enjoy American Graffiti, let's be sure to watch it and appreciate it often. And if you've never seen it, this is your sign to watch something new tonight. With that, we find ourselves at the end of our discussion of American Graffiti on VHS and the end of episode 6 of Tape Talk Tuesday. Do you have a fondness for American Graffiti like I do? When's the first time you saw it? Thanks for watching Retro Video Playback.
I think we've had an accident. Well, God damn it, I won't report you this time, but next time just watch it, will you?